Hey everybody, sorry I'm starting a bit late. I got a little distracted. I was playing Stellaris, and then I looked up and realized that it was 12:58, and I was like, "Ah, shit." Okay, so I had to run. Hey, so I guess I should start by saying welcome to the stream. If this is your first time at a countdown stream, this is a thing I do every week before a video comes out. The hour countdown before a new video comes out, and then I just talk to the audience, take some questions, chill out, and then at 2, new video goes live, and then I am on my way. So a few little announcements, I guess I should say, is that tonight at, I think I said at 6 p.m., there's going to be a Stellaris stream. I've been playing the new expansion, and I've been having a really good time. So that's going to be the topic of the evening. I'm going to play as the Space Aztecs. It's going to be pretty great. And I also am. I'm also going to be talking about, or I'm also going to be doing a stream with Mexi on Sunday for Subscriber Appreciation Day. So Shachar, I wrote a empire. I made my own empire that is basically going to be like the Aztecs in space. So alternate history where the Aztecs took over the world. Yeah, Mexi and I are going to do a stream on Sunday, and that's about all I have for the moment. Life's a little crazy. So, what do you guys want me to talk about today? Wait, I just lost my chat pop out. All right. Oh. As far as stuff going on, I do have to say that I'm in a situation where I'm working on a D&D game that I'm running every other Monday, and I'm preparing for one this weekend. And one of the things that is going to stick out about it is that it's going to be streamed starting in about 2 weeks, March 12th. March 12th is when it's going to be it's going to come out, and it's going to be awesome. History of gun control in the U.S. I mean, it actually, there was, for the longest time, really no gun laws. There's pretty much all done at the state level. There's very few Second Amendment cases before the Supreme Court. In the 19th century, there was one where people were trying to argue against giving blacks citizenship rights because then they would be entitled to their Second Amendment rights and they would be able to get guns. But in the 1920s, in the 1920s, there was a mass shooting, and they banned assault rifles for the longest time. And then it's interesting because the NRA, which used to be like kind of like a hobby organization, evolved into this extremely toxic, basically lobbyist for the gun manufacturers. And they've been sort of stoking the fires of gun fury for the last like 40, 50 years. And they're like almost wholesale responsible for making all of this fury and instilling all of these insane power fantasies in a lot of the gun crazy people's crazy gun minds. And so they're and it's still working, and it's why nothing can get done. So and now gun crimes or mass shootings are increasing because they get attention, because there's just no way to fix any of the most basic logistical problems about getting guns. And so, yeah, I mean, it's not super surprising. The gun problem's going to get worse. There's more people, and the situation is U.S. is getting more violent. So, not too surprising. Did you know that in my usual D&D game, I'm a time traveler? That's pretty impressive. How do you keep everything straight though? I feel like time travel would be hard with like all of the grandfather paradox problems. Okay, so for the D&D sessions, they're going to be edited down in that when I release them as podcasts, hopefully, they'll be about 2 hours. So I'll have about 2-hour episodes once a week. Maybe I'll even try to eliminate some of the more pregnant pauses and stuff like that. But, there's only so many hours in a week to edit and prepare things. Yeah, exactly what Frank Martin says. There's like this insane power fantasy that people who defend the Second Amendment because they want to be able to restrict tyranny, who think that with a couple AR-15s are going to be able to take down the U.S. military. It's just ridiculous. It's it's going to be a 4-hour session. Basically how I'm running the session, how I'm running my D&D game that's going to be streaming on every other Monday, is that I'm going to run a session from 7 until 11, and probably in the middle take about a 10-15 minute break. So I've done one session so far about 2 weeks ago, and the two sections of the evening were about an hour and 55 minutes, maybe an hour 50 minutes. And I think that once I get more on board, once I start making like a podcast and like putting it in syndication, I'm going to release one of those episodes a week. So you'll get one roughly 2-hour video each week. OMG, you're real. Yes, OM7, I'm totally real. I'm a real human being. I'm a real boy. Well, Ace, what have we talked about? I talked a little bit about guns in the United States, and I talked about D&D. That's pretty much it. Are you going to do blood sports too? Can you please elaborate, OM7? Yes, Spartan, I know I'm a god. Thank you very much. Are you pro-guns? I'm not pro-guns. I would love to live in a world where guns are just a regrettable part of our technological history. But in the meantime, if no one's going to agree with me on that, we can at least agree that we can have guns be in the hands of people who are trained and capable of using them in a safe manner. How's my week? My week is, yeah, I saw that you almost lost half a toe. Hope you're okay. Hope your toe is intact. This week has been a little kooky. I have been working on a video, kind of dealing with the fallout of writing a bunch of scripts last week. So this week was playing catch up in a lot of ways. Am I against hunting? Hunting has some utility. Whether or not I feel like guns for hunting and guns for committing mass shootings are very different, and I feel like you can definitely get rid of one, not the other. And I would preferably, if we could have a world where we had to choose between hunting and total world peace, I would probably take the world peace. I mean, hunting's okay. I don't think it's worth keeping massive amounts of keeping us armed for. But if we saw like hunting rifles as literally just a thing that some like kooky hunters had, I guess that'd be okay. How does being against guns fit in with being an anarchist? Well, I actually talk about this in a video that's coming out in early April, and it's me talking about violence. And to me, I don't think that even the most well-intentioned armed revolt or armed revolution will ever be successful, because when you use violence to instill whatever form of government you feel you need to put in form, whether that be no government or, you know, the government of your choosing, when you use violence to do that, what you're going to do is you're going to create the seeds of your revolution's own destruction. Israel is the perfect case where nobody is able to come to any sort of peaceful solution over who owns what, because now, after 70, actually to an extent, almost 100 years now of the cycle of violence and retaliation for the retaliation and retaliation for the retaliation for the retaliation, you no longer are fighting over principles. You are fighting over personal vendettas. You're fighting because they killed your family member, and they're fighting because you killed one of theirs. And really, any sort of violent revolution is just going to result in that. It's just going to result in a perpetuating cycle of violence. There's no winning. And so, communist revolution, the Soviet uprising in 1917 that led to the Soviet Union, resulted in a lot of people who had lost their families, lost loved ones, and they hated the Soviet Union. They hated everything it stood for, not because of the ideas they put forward, but because they had a personal vendetta against them. And that's not something that you can talk somebody out of rationally. As for hunting for food, I think hunting for food is actually a fairly more sustainable practice than the thing we're doing with cows and chickens, because there actually is a lot of situations in which we've sort of tilted the balance of predator and prey in some regions, and so some animals reproduce out of control, like seals, for example. Because all the polar bears are dying, the seals are reproducing out of control. And because we have killed off a lot of wolves, also like deer are reproducing out of control. So controlled hunting is actually it's a pretty good idea. Well, shit, Ace. Sorry about losing half your toe. Hopefully you got some good painkillers for that. What the hell did you do to like lose part of your toe? That's crazy. I'm very sorry, Spartan 101, that I'll be streaming during your birthday, but you won't be able to watch it. I'm very sorry. So actually, I think that on the hunting thing, there's a book by Stuart Brand that, if you guys are big Step Back fans, you're probably fans of like technology and environmentalism and those kinds of things. And I just gotta find out the name of the Stuart Brand book that I read that is about. I think it's. I gotta find his book. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Whole Earth Discipline: An Eco-Pragmatist Manifesto. I read that book back in 2013, It was really good. And one of the things I did say is that we need more conservationists with a taste for venison. Oh, hey, did you answer whose fault is World War I yet? I forgot. Last week I said I was going to do that. All right. Look at my time travel explanation. All right. Yeah, I see it. I see it. Gosh. Your personal history is safe, but your 2 of May people did disappear. Okay. All right. Whew. World War I. I promised you guys last week, I remember now, that I was going to explain why World War I was, whose fault World War I was. And I made the argument, I think I would still make the argument today, that it was something that was bound to happen. And people who blame Germany or Serbia or Austria-Hungary or Franz Ferdinand or whoever don't really understand that there is a lot of factors that meant that a First World War was bound to happen because of something. If it wasn't going to be because of, if it wasn't going to happen over Serbia and the Austro-Hungarian Empire, it would have happened over the Greeks and Turkey. It would have happened over Alsace and Lorraine. It would have happened over something. There was a lot of, no, it was not the fault of multiculturalists. Ohm7, you must be new to this stream or this channel, because I'm not a fan of nationalism, even the slightest, because all it does is lead to war and genocide and death and destruction and hate and death and violence. So, World War I. World War I was the confluence of several factors. First of all, there was no international system to deal with. There's no, I'm not going to kick him out, don't worry. There was no international arbitration system. What this means is that before the United Nations, even before the League of Nations, there was no international place where countries could air out their grievances and talk to each other in front of the whole world. So that was a big issue. And that meant that the only time that people could work out their problems was during treaty negotiations, usually after really big wars, because that's the only time when you could get all of the big powers of the world to come together and talk about something. And there hadn't been one for a while. Basically, there hadn't been one since Napoleon had been put down and all of Europe decided what Europe was going to look like after the Napoleonic era. Usually that's considered the beginning of like the Victorian Age. And World War I was basically the end of the Victorian Age. And there were a few other things. On the technological front, there was a change in how war worked. And there was signs of this coming up as early as the American Civil War. So what you had was the invention of automatic weapons, which was making cavalry less and less useful. There was the increasing of defensive capabilities, things like landmines, things like barbed wire, things like trench warfare, that made it way easier to defend than to attack. Third, you had the beginnings of germ theory and a safer way of dealing with infection, which meant that fewer people died of infections than they used to in war. I think at like its peak during like the Crimean War, something like 1 death in 8 was on the battlefield, and most of them were death by infection. And 4, you had the industrial. Yeah, you're talking about machine guns. That's kind of the thing I said about automatic weapons earlier. You had the Gatling gun taking off. The other thing you had was you had industrialized war. You had industrialization hitting a new peak, and if you know anything about how specifically railroads work, when it comes to doing something like mobilizing armies, it requires a lot of pre-planning and work. Like, for example, if I were the president of France and I wanted to have a plan for mobilizing my army using the railroads, I had to design this extremely complex series of railroad timetables to make sure that all the trains ran on time and that everything was going efficiently. This worked. Like, every country had one of these plans, but in order to have that plan work, once you go to war, you are committed. Like, once you say we're mobilizing, there's no going back. You are in a total war, because you cannot just partially go to war. There's no skirmishes. It is all or nothing. On top of that, you then have a political situation in which there's no international place for people to talk to each other. What this resulted in is the different countries of Europe making secret alliances with each other. So, for example, the whole Belgian thing, the defensive pact that Britain had with Belgium was not publicly known. It was a thing that they had worked out in secret. The Russians, the agreement between France and Tsar Nicholas II was a secret alliance. People did not know that was going to happen. And so people were starting to understand that there was two major factions starting to build up. One that was made up of Germany, which was like the new kid on the block that was, really growing and becoming powerful, and Austria-Hungary, which was a country that was sort of on the decline. It was a empire that had never really gotten to the great high peaks that it had never gotten to, but because of the nascent nationalist movement, a lot of Eastern European movements were starting to cause it problems. You also had Italy, which was a central power at the beginning of the war. They were a also new country, and they were still trying to maintain unity and trying to make their place in the world the same way Germany did. And then there was the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire was having the exact same problem as Austria-Hungary. It had an Arab nationalist movement going on in the Middle East. It had lost a bunch of territory. It had lost Egypt to the British. It had lost Crimea it lost Crimea. So over time, the Ottoman Empire was starting to fall apart. And I know this is really long explanation, but then you had the incident with the Black Hand. You had the incident with the death of Franz Ferdinand at the hand of Gabriel Princip in Sarajevo, I believe. And there was an incident because the Austro-Hungarians wanted to invade Serbia. Russia had a defense pact with Serbia, and everybody knew when that happened, that if things had gone forward, that there was going to be a world war. There was going to be a war unlike anybody had ever imagined, because people were already seeing that the capacity for these major empires to go to war was getting so big that if a major war had happened in Europe, it would be almost apocalyptic in nature, which means that there was a lot of effort after the assassination of Franz Ferdinand to try and stop this war from happening. You had the German, the Austro-Hungarian ambassador to Russia and the Russian ambassador of some Russian diplomat. They were able to meet up. They actually were at the point where they had gotten to an agreement that would have stopped World War I, that they could have dealt with the whole Serbian issue once and for all. And then that night, the Russian ambassador had a heart attack and died. And still, they wanted to stop the war because nobody wanted this war to happen. Germany would have probably been the person to come and step in. But here's the problem. the German emperor, the Kaiser, was on a Mediterranean cruise at this time. He didn't know what was going on. And so there was no one to talk to. And so relations broke down, and they did the ultimatum, and they invaded Serbia, which automatically locked Russia into the war, which locked France into the war, which locked Germany into the war. Then Germany invaded Belgium to as part of like one of their plans of that, that mobilization thing, which locked Britain in the war, and you had World War I. And if you think about it, it's really easy to just say, hey, there's like one, like you could just say it was Gabriel Princip and Franz Ferdinand, and that's what caused World War I. But really, there was an entire structure that was like the First World War was the entire Victorian structure collapsing in a extremely dramatic fashion. It was industrialization meeting the anarchic world order meeting nationalism, all in this horrible collapse. And it took millions of people down with it. And so really, the context is to blame. The last century, the mix of nationalism and post-Napoleonic world diplomacy was the reason why World War I happened. Whew. I hope that that was a long explanation for a crazy thing. Because for World War I to happen the way it did, there had to be a lot of things go wrong over and over again. Ooh. Did Bernie Sanders kill Rosa Luxemburg? Is this a new conspiracy theory? I've never heard of this this conspiracy theory, but judging how Rosa Luxemburg died, I think Rosa Luxemburg died when Bernie Sanders was very young. Like, okay. She died before Bernie Sanders was even born. So, like, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. Seven, I do streams regularly. I do one every Thursday before a video comes out. I do one on the Alternate History Hub channel every Sunday night. And then once a month, on the last Sunday of the month, I do a stream with some guest. How old is Bernie? Bernie is in his 70s. So he was born in the 40s. Rosa Luxemburg died in 1919. All right, Lenin, pro or anti? I am anti-Lenin. I think that Lenin is responsible for more damage to Marxist theory or Marxist politics, and he's done more damage for the world and for Marxism in general than any other living person or any other person in history. Like the Soviet Union took totalitarian capitalism and then called it Marxism, and now everyone thinks that now this is what Marxism means. It's terrible. Oh, man. I did not know that Only Bro doesn't like left comms. Okie dokie. Pro or anti-Ringo? Like Ringo Starr? He seems okay. I don't know that much about him. He's a drummer for the Beatles. I don't really know what else. I don't know anything else about him. Vanguardism. What I would say is I would put myself in the realm of, as Only Bro had pointed out, left communism or anarchism or anarcho-pacifism, I think, is the one that I like the most. But, you know, that's just me. Oh, man. World War I rant, man. That was so much. Isn't anarchism a lot like libertarianism? Actually, yes. Libertarianism, like anarchism, has two flavors to it, and one is a gross misunderstanding of what libertarianism and anarchism are. So there's libertarians like the American sense of libertarians, and there's anarcho-capitalists who are who are basically like super libertarians, and they are primarily American people who have a belief that the best way to run the world is for literally everything to be privatized, to the point where all roads are toll roads and the common things don't exist and the government doesn't exist. And it's disturbing, super disturbing. Usually it's them complaining that they can't like own slaves or marry children or drink raw milk or something weird like that. But libertarianism, the actual term libertarianism, and anarchism, the actual word anarchism, are both far left ideologies that believe in the removal of the authority of both the state and of capitalism, and knowing that all forms of hierarchy are unjust, whether they be private or public. I don't know what a video about Alsace would be about, to be honest. I don't know how good I would make one. I'm not super good at like little European thingies. Do you think dinosaurs were what history calls dragons? Probably not. Dinosaurs went extinct a long time before there were humans. There might be some evidence that people finding dinosaur bones or dinosaur fossils are what they thought of when they thought of dragons, but I don't know much about that. Let's see. I heard Ontario sells this milk in bags, the same of soy and nut milks. No, we do sell milk in bags, but just cow milk. Soy milk and almond milk and stuff are still in cartons. What form of a government economy do you see as a viable option once the AI drop takes away 1/3 of Homo sapien jobs in a decade? This is kind of my whole thing that probably makes me different from other Marxists, is that I think that I'm not super revolutionary, because I do believe that people who believe in political revolutions or in violent revolutions are putting the cart before the horse. And I think that economies are emergent phenomenon of the material reality in which they're created. AI will be one of the largest changes to the means of production that have happened in history. And I think that it will mean that what Marx talked about when he talked about communism and the end of capitalism will emergently come out of this period that you're talking about, where a lot of jobs are going to disappear because of automation. How turbulent that time will be, we don't know, because the last time there was a major change from feudalism to capitalism, there were tons of revolutions and lots of people died, but who knows? Who knows? No country is ever communist, and there will never be any. That is true, because communism, by its definition, cannot happen in a country. Communism, by its very definition, does not have a government. There's no such thing as a government in a communist society. So therefore, there can't be a communist country, because there wouldn't be countries. Oh, is my cat here somewhere? I don't know. Thoughts on Turning Point USA? Oh, isn't Turning Point USA that like diaper fetish community that disguises itself as a conservative action group? Do you think there's such thing as competence? Sure. Could you do some general predictions on Germany winning the Battle of Verdun? No, not really. I don't know much about. I like when it comes to wars. I typically focus on the things that cause it and the things that happened as a cause of it. But I don't really study the things that happened during wars because I find that boring and depressing. Don't you think that Marx is a bit presumptuous, though? And I say that because Hegel is a bit presumptuous, too. So the way that Marx writes is he started off as a person who was trying to critique capital. He was trying to figure out what it is about capital that doesn't work. Why is it not causing this wonderful world that people say it was going to? And what he argued was that we're getting to a point faster and faster where our ability to make things and the amount. So he has this belief that the value of an object is really based on how much time, how much labor time it took to make it. And it's called the labor theory of value. But that industrialization is leading to that number dropping to near zero. And Marx would argue that as it moves to near zero, the capitalist modes of production that we do are going to become, and the hierarchical structures based around it are going to become less and less viable over time. And that it's going to inevitably lead to something. And he argued that communism is the natural outcropping of it, because in a situation in which you're pretty much in a post-scarcity economy, it's going to be kind of impossible for anybody to have a ruling class and a subservient class. All right. What is today's video on? Today's video is actually the premiere of a new history series, and it is it's about the new history series is about the it's going to be a U.S. history series, kind of like Crash Course U.S. History, but it's going to be longer and better. Oh, at least it's going to have it's going to be more in depth, and it's the first episode of that. So it's on pre-Columbian America. I didn't ban Mr. Martel. He's blocked out for a few minutes for saying something transphobic. Oh my! Was Shaggy from Scooby-Doo addicted to weed? Yes, I think that's pretty much accepted. Sounds amazing. I'm so glad I found this channel. Congratulations, Rose. Thank you very much for coming and checking out the channel. I hope you enjoy the video that comes out at 2. Will it cover the Americas or only North America? At the moment, it starts off as all of the Americas, but moving along, it's going to be a U.S. history. It's a U.S. history series. Do you think that building hierarchies of competence are legitimate? Nope. No. I firmly believe that people should receive things that they need and give whatever they can. I don't see that as a problem. I don't understand why we think that there are people who deserve more or less just because their capacity to perform work is higher or lower. I think that's extremely ableist. What kind of emergence of feudalism out of slave society? What was the emergence of feudalism out of slave societies like? I think that the feudal order is a more basic form, like more of primary accumulation. It was a period in which I would argue that it is the period that came out of pre-agrarian societies, and that feudalism is it's sort of the emergent superstructure that builds on top of agrarian societies, because back in the Middle Ages, or pretty much from the time we started farming until the time we started making industrial products, almost everything was farmed. And farming requires land. It has a very linear growth rate. It has a very linear power growth based on how much land you own. And so that's why ownership of land was more important back in the medieval period, because people were fighting over more farmland, so more crops, so more money, more power. While today, it's resources. Can you mention the regulators in your USA history series? I can try. Let's see. Good job, Spartan 101. Stay in school, though. You don't want to get in trouble just on my behalf. Okay, where are we? Do you plan to do a video on how sovereigns misuse U.S. law? I don't, like, are you talking about sovereign citizens like Wesley Snipes and shit? How is the Israeli videos going? Not bad. I just finished the I finished the first draft of part 2 yesterday. Part 1 has been filmed. I filmed it last Friday. And so I finished part 2. I finished the first draft of part 2 yesterday. I'm going to edit it in a couple days once I've had some time to go away from it. But both of them are really long. They're both going to be probably like 13, 14-minute videos. So you're getting a lot. U.S. History Series, are you going to make your bias clear, or will you try to be as neutral as possible? I try to be as well-researched as possible. I think that by having a political position is not a bias. It's not like I am ignoring things because of the things I'm saying. I am interpreting things in a way that is cogent to my thought process and my rationality. There's a false idea that somehow having a position means that you are in some way ignoring important information, and I don't do that. At least I hope not. I try not to. And honestly, I think that my work only appears hyper left-wing because history as written, history as taught in elementary schools, is an extremely right-wing focused thing. And so, if anything, I'm trying to counterbalance the bias in history, because established history is extremely nationalistic and extremely right-wing. And that is a problem, because it leads to nationalistic and right-wing people who, I don't know if you've noticed, there are a lot of these days, and they need to go away. Ohm7, I honestly don't care whether or not something is observed in nature. That's not really an argument for why something should be done. Like, hamsters eat their babies. Does that mean we should eat our babies? Like, no. Stop. Or else you're going to turn into like Jordan Peterson with his stupid lobster talk. Do you have any advice for someone thinking about going back to school to pursue a PhD in history? Okay, Michael Kirshner. I would say you should only do that. You should only do your PhD in something like history if there is a question that is not answered that you desperately want to answer. PhDs are a marathon and extremely trying on your sense of motivation. They are a very difficult process of working on a single tiny question for years. And if you do not have an iron will, if you do not have burning desire to answer this one thing, if you're not willing to dedicate a whole lot of your life to one small area, it's not going to work out for you. I know, because it's rough for me. I'm having a hard time with it. How come Russia has the best hats? I do not know. Was there ever a monarchist movement in the USA? Yes, actually. There was in the USA during the Constitutional Convention. Was it the Constitutional Convention? When they were drawing up what the United States would look like, there were some people who didn't understand the idea of a republic, and they actually very narrowly voted against the idea of making George Washington King of America. That's actually where the Assassin's Creed expansion comes from. Is this? It comes from this period where they just narrowly voted to not make King George Washington, so replace King George III with King George I. And then there's some really funny ones, like this guy who declared himself the Emperor of America. I think his name was like Norman or something like that, Emperor Norman. Or are you willing to talk about the Parkland shooting? I have questions about your opinion, but I know someone would rather not talk about it. The girl you didn't notice? Why don't? Yeah, I'll answer questions about the Parkland shooting. I don't know. I'll try anyway. I don't know if I'm going to be able to give anything insightful, but I am willing to take questions on it. I'm not afraid to talk about it. It's thoughts on cop shows that use characters using their Fifth Amendment rights as a way to show their guilt. I think that a lot of the ways that cop shows talk about show guilty people and show the justice system shows a desire for revenge over a desire for justice. And I think that they actually are quite toxic to the way that we approach dealing with crime. How does East Asia fit into the slave feudalism capitalism theory? I'm not sure about the slave state thing, but China had a feudal system for a long time, and then when it industrialized, it got its sort of capitalism. Like, I don't know. Seems to fit. Yeah, there you go. Emperor Norton. That's the one. Didn't Alexander Hamilton want a monarchy? That sounds like something he would want. He was very elitist. He very much believed that there were people who were better than others, mostly because he had come up from being poor, and he thought himself to be very much better than the average person. He wasn't a nice guy. He also was very quick to anger, and he very quick to anger, cheated on his wife, possibly twice, once with his wife's own sister, traded slaves despite being against slavery, and had such a quick temper that he was always getting into duels, and eventually one killed him. It's very different from the story Lin-Manuel Miranda tells you. What if America had a parliament instead of a Senate? It would result in an America that changes a lot more every couple of years. If you had like a strict parliamentary system, like with a prime minister, you would have no president, you would have no Senate, you would just have the House, and whoever was Speaker of the House would be the prime minister or the leader of the country. So in the situation right now, Paul Ryan would be the prime minister of America. And it would result in situations very much like how Canada deals with it, which is when a party has control of parliament, there's really nothing that the opposition can do to stop their bills. And so you end up in a situation in America where there's only two parties, where you'd have like when you're in a Republican House, the Republican agenda would just all go through without any hesitation. And the same would happen during a Democratic thing. You'd have whiplash. Canada changes. Compared to America, Canada passes laws very quickly. And that has an impact on Canada. What's your opinion on representative democracy? I don't think it's democratic. I think that giving your voice or hoping to get the chance to vote once every 4 years for who is going to dominate you is not exactly is not democracy. What do you think of some of the student activism that sparked from the Parkland shooting and some of the media response? I haven't seen too much of the media response, but I think those kids are good. I think those kids are. I think I like those kids. I think the fact that they're standing up for what they believe in when they've been victims of violence, and instead of just disappearing from the limelight, they're going to turn their pain into something that might make America a better place. I mean, and they're like kids. Like, I don't know. It's pretty inspiring. They're inspiring young people. I hope that I wish them all the success in the world. Yep. I really don't like police brutality either, Doughboy DeVito. Oh, I did not know that Alexander Hamilton also cheated at duels. That makes sense. Yeah, so Sweden has a separate speaker and prime minister. There's a few countries that have a prime minister and a president because they're republics. Canada doesn't have a president because we're technically a constitutional monarchy. So our head of state is a queen who passes everything. But that's not true in many places. Net neutrality, oh boy. Does the Queen of England have to sign bills passed into Canada as well? Kind of. She has a representative in Canada called the Lieutenant Governor or the Governor General, and the Governor General is basically is appointed by the Queen. Goes through every gets they choose a new one every I don't know, decade or so, and the Governor General is basically the Queen's representative in Canada and deals with that kind of stuff. Well, shit. I don't know why. I don't know how Sweden works then, Sir Zhao Zhao. Do you think Trump is a Cheeto? Hell yes. He is entirely made up of corn and cheese. Just to show how bad corn is for you. Thoughts, turkey. Is that a question about thoughts on turkey? Or about the thoughts turkey, the turkey that thinks? That was a terrible joke, but the thoughts turkey. Oh, I mean, I don't know, Turkey, it's a cool country. It's been around for a long time. I think the region's pretty cool. One of my dreams is to go to Istanbul at some point, but also, yeah, if your question is about Erdogan and the invasion of Syria, it's fucked up. Turkey is moving towards a less secular dictatorship, and I think that Ataturk is probably rolling over in his grave because of it. Thoughts on Turkey the animal? I think it's dry and it's hard to prepare properly, but if it is done well, it is pretty good. I once saw a flock of wild turkeys when I was out on a walk a few years ago. I thought that was kind of a magical moment because I had never seen a wild turkey before. And then all of a sudden I saw 10, and I thought that was kind of cool. They are much smaller when they're wild. The thoughts turkey. In Sweden, the elections are for parliament, and then the speaker proposes a prime minister candidate, and the king is just a figurehead. All right. So, all right, then it sounds like Sweden's not a constitutional monarchy. It just has a king in name only. How important is the tension between rural and urban areas and countries? I flip back and forth between thinking it's the most important dichotomy and not. I think it is the most important dichotomy. I think that if there is one way that you can, besides class, even though this is a rural-urban divide is highly tied to class, there is no other factor, I think, in someone's life that affects how different your day-to-day existence is than whether you live in an urban or rural situation. So it's a big deal. The needs and desires of people who live in those different regions are very, very different from each other. It's big. It's a big deal. God, thank you, Spartan 101. I appreciate that. I appreciated the last 700 times you said it too. Who invented buffalo chicken wings? This is a good question. These are the important questions we need to answer on Step Back. Who invented buffalo wings? No, I couldn't deal with the complete outpouring of jokes that would come out of me making a video about chicken wings. How right-wing are American Democrats compared to actual left-wing politics? I would probably say that the Democratic Party, you know, this is not true of all of them, but as a general rule, would be considered to the right of most countries' right-wing parties. I think that if a Democratic politician were to run in Canada, they would be considered more right-wing than our conservatives, because the Overton window is so far to the right in America that it's like out of kilter with the rest of the planet. Men and young boys use guns as a way to demonstrate to patriarchal society how masculine they are by using a powerful killing machine. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, Israel's, oh my, we're running out of time. We're coming up on 2 o'clock. I would probably say Chris Bedison, because urban poverty and rural poverty are very different things. All right, I'm going to find the name of the, I'm going to find the link, because we have about a minute and a bit. We have a minute and 10 seconds, and then it all ends, my friends, and a new Step Back video is born, and you guys get to enjoy it. You guys, I can't believe you aren't sick of hearing me already. I do this every week. All right. All right, I got it. Let's take a look at the chat one more time. Jeremy Corbyn. Which left-wing thinker couple is your OTP? No idea. Oh, man. Have you been told that you're agog because you are? I've never... Oh, agod. I have heard that a couple times, Spartan 101. I can't remember from who. All right, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4... 3, 2, 1. Happy New Year. All right, everybody. There is the new video. Like, share, subscribe, see who can get to comment first. I hope you guys have an amazing week. I will see you all on I'll see you all tonight. Tonight, because I'm playing Stellaris tonight. So be ready. Be ready for Stellaris at 6. So I'm doing another one in 4 hours. See ya.